Hello and welcome everyone to integrating security into the API dev pipeline. We're going to start in just a minute. In a minute, I will introduce Rohit from F5. Really excited about this presentation, and actually extends an earlier webinar we had also with F5. But I wanted to take a moment to just mention who we are. apiConnections is a community of API professionals and enthusiasts across India, Singapore, in Indonesia. I'm the organizer of this. In several countries, it's known as API Craft Singapore, for example. In addition to the apiConnections community, I'm also the organizer of the API Days conferences in Singapore and India, and I'll talk about those in a moment. And in my day job, I'm the founder of Blue Connector, which is a consulting and training company. Feel free to go to the apiConnections website for new information about our events. One thing I do want to mention is the previous webinar that we had with F5 was about securing APIs, and it talked about some of the key threats. Bharat Merja from F5 presented that, and you can find a summary of this on the apiConnections.co website. Bharat talked about some of the common breaches and the attacks, and also the OWASP API top 10 vulnerabilities, which are very relevant actually to the presentation we're about to hear now. So the topic for today is about actually securing APIs across the dev pipeline. And I'm very pleased to have Rohit Andani from F5 to present this. So please welcome Rohit.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks for a brief introduction, and thanks for inviting us for this webinar. So quickly, I'll introduce myself. So I take care of the the DevOps business and F5, and as an F5, of course, we started our company as a load balancer, which was predominantly in the app space. But now, since the app landscape has changed, the organization started adopting more microservices. So we actually acquired an organization called NGINX, and today it's been almost 2.5 years. We are, day by day monetizing this particular product. And we reached to a place where this product is solving a large number of challenges. So today's agenda is specific to the API protection. But having said that, NGINX, as you must be aware, you guys are from the DevOps fraternity, you must be aware what the capability this tool is having. So to start with, I'll just give you the glimpse of where the industry is moving and how these APIs are becoming more and more powerful, and the adoptions that are happening today, specifically in the API space. Okay, so what we're gonna cover in this specific webinars is APIs are the big deal. Okay, the growth of APIs, the dependencies of API on the business and the app level has increased, and therefore the attack surface is also increased. So how do we really deal with those, attack vector, the modern attack vector, as well as the growth of APIs? Second thing we're gonna briefly discuss about, and that will be followed by the demo, how we can ensure the delivery of these APIs securely, rather than just restricting to the OWASP top 10. What are the adaptive authentication? What are the adaptive security models which are available with F5, which actually ensure you must be protecting your API infrastructure from all the latest threat? And then what is the framework? Okay, so how do we really fit in? How we really improvise the existing ecosystem for any organization who are still relying with the traditional tooling or maybe a native toolings to protect their APIs. So this is brief agenda we're going to discuss today. I'll encourage you all to post any question if you have in the chat window. We do have a poll. So probably I'll encourage you guys to also participate in the poll in order to, give your recommendation about the APIs security that we probably, push as a question in your screen. So to start with the growth of API, we have seen in the market, and there are a lot of, I'll say the consulting organization doing the research. And this is the data from from the research website, Programmable Web. And they actually tell the growth of the APIs that is being happening across the world. And it isn't surprised that we are seeing a growth explosion of APIs. And that's really not an indication that this will show in the near future as well. Okay, what you see here is the growth rate of APIs that have been published by this particular industry or this particular, I'll say the consulting or a researcher organization. So this is just an indication for reflection. But if you see the reality, the ground reality, there might be an organization who are consuming more than 40,000 APIs. And we have seen those customers, okay? So growth of API is immense. And that's where, if you see, this is the third largest CAGR market that is there. So followed by the security and the cloud adoption. So if you look at the API CAGR growth, it is around 20%, and prediction of that is somewhere between 2021 to 2031. So it's a 10-year forecasting that we are seeing. And if you look at the vertical wise, none of the industry vertical is untouched with the adoption of APIs, be it media and telcos and BFSI who really started this. But if you look at now, the adoption of the APIs are more in the healthcare system, because you have to maintain their patient management record. They need an app where the patient can land and see what are the different reports, what are the different prescription which are there, and based on that they can easily order the medicines that they require. They can even consult with the third parties in order to take the probably the consultation also. Okay, so this is where the APIs is really growing. None of the business is untouched with the adoption of APIs. But since, of course, the adoption is increasing for APIs, there are security challenges that we started seeing, and a lot of organization is investing heavily. Okay, Gartner did recently a research on the APIs challenges that organizations are facing, and they choose top companies who were the early adopter of APIs, and they are consuming APIs for day-to-day business. And as for the response from these organizations, they clearly figured it out. Security concern is the biggest challenge for APIs. There are a lot of news that we are seeing on our daily newspaper that these companies have lost these many credentials. These companies have done a lot of fraud, okay? And the fraud is happening through an API. So unfortunately, we still see the security as one of the biggest challenge for organization as they develop and manage API-based operation. This chart is from a recent Gartner survey where organizations stack rank their biggest challenge with the APIs. At the top, the list is security, followed closely by lack of skills. So why is security such a challenge? Okay, because when we actually see the same survey for the web application, security become a challenge there also, and same is for the APIs. So why do you think there is such a challenge in security, specifically in the API space? So next slide is where I'm sure you must have got a poll in your screen. I'll encourage you guys to participate in the poll and tell us what API security challenges are you facing. So your organization must be having an APIs, or you must be developing an APIs for your customer. What do you think? What are the top challenges? Because we already know Gartner has said security is one of the challenge. What do you think? Under security, what categorization of security that should be? So please do poll, and I'll probably continue from there on. So thank you for spending time on the poll. I'm sure you guys must have responded with your answer. So just to go with the next slide. Okay, this is again a Gartner feedback, which is claiming by 2022, API abuse will be the most frequent attack. And I'm sure this is a area where a lot of businesses are really struggling in. And if you look at this,
Rohit, I'm just sharing the results of the poll here. Thanks very much for sharing your perspective, and I think it's pretty clearly detection and prevention of security attacks, and their observability is top of people's mind.
Absolutely, John. I guess I really appreciate that. And this is exactly what Gartner is saying. If you're going to see my slide, this is what Gartner has mentioned. The API abuse and will be the factor, or probably the important, I'll say the factor in 2022, specifically when it comes to the APIs. And that's going to really be one of the main medium where the data breaches are happening. And why it is really happening? Because of no adequate observability. Okay, we do not know how many data, how many APIs call that we are really receiving in, and how these calls are being handled by our API gateway. And if it is really handled by the API gateway, what level of security protection do we have in order to cross-validate the right amount of the APIs, the right amount of the data that is being gone, and right amount of the authentication and validation. Okay, so that is where the importance of API security comes in. Okay, and it's not something that we are predicting the future. The risk is already being highlighted and it's already there. Okay, so let's understand the API lifecycle framework and why it is important to introduce the security in the very first level, which is while you're planning for API. So there are three different personas that are playing a major role in the API lifecycle. Starting from the app dev or API dev, the team or the persona is responsible to managing the code, to build that code, and in insurance of the or probably testing the code. The second persona is the DevOps. Once the testing is completed, how do you really deploy this code in the production environment, and how do you really make sure the publishing of this code? Last one, but not the least, organizations does have the API managers, which are actually doing the rest of the operational tasks. How do we really manage the life cycle, and how do we really monitor, which comes under the observability part. Okay, so this is where the challenge is. To understand why security is so challenging, we can actually look at the traditional application flow and the API lifecycle flow. It is the same thing. Security is nowhere considered. Okay, so what is the missing here? Where the security controls are, that is missing. And this is why we see a lot of incident in the API space. These teams include very smart people, but they are also very busy. They simply doesn't have that extra cycle to spend on the security. So how can we help them insert security as part of the cycle? So this is something we're going to discuss about as part of the next slide. So if you look at this, I just reframed the same cycle into a parallel system. So this challenge is how to insert security without burning release process. Let's flatten out the API development lifecycle we saw earlier. The API developers is responsible for checking in the code. This includes the open API specification. You might hear this term Swagger files, correct? Where you have the complete definition about your APIs. The DevOps team then build, and the CI/CD pipeline used to automate the build and the test process. The API manager, again, configure the API's gateway, access control, and ensure API can respond to the API request. If you look at this flow, I'll just quickly tell you, the first, we need to start early in the process. This is where we call it as a shift left story. I'm sure from the DevOps fraternity, you must be aware about what is shift left. Rather than introducing the security as a later part, nowadays we believe in the shift left topology, where the security can early be adoption during the time of the planning of your application. So it's not a job of now a SecOps guy or a security consultant. This become now a practice to introduce in the development phase only. So therefore, security is checked into the API code. What help makes this work in the Swagger file I mentioned, this contains all the details of API and can be consumed by our security solution to generate a security policy specific to the API. So the moment you're going to write your application code, you can integrate the security code for our device also, which actually going to push across with the application. So whenever there is a new release which is happening, you also have a definition of the security. And this is where you embed security in each and every phase. Okay, so in phase 1, you did writing the code of apps with the security check-in. Then you build the security policies along with your code, and you tested it, how it is really performing, whether there is any false positive or not, the expectation from the APIs are really meeting or not, or the stress testing that you have to do is really happening or not. So that since we have both the APIs and the corresponding security component, we can test them together in the test phase of the lifecycle. Defect can be identified here. And if we have to probably roll back, we have to redefine it, we can do it here. And once everything is ready, we can actually provide and deploy the code with the security. What benefit you gonna get as an organization? Since earlier security was somewhere sitting in some gateway level product, which doesn't have much visibility what is happening in backend or in the application. Now, since you integrated security as a code item within your CI/CD pipeline, you get better visibility and the better control, because this is a code which is running within your application, and your application, the way it is behaving, we can detect that behavior and we can actually put the prevention policies accordingly, and you can tweak the policies accordingly. Okay. And since it is tested in the build phase, probably like what are the impact, if there is any performance impact, if there is any other impact that you're going to make, you can really tweak it during the development phase. That really not going to deliver or delay your overall delivery of an application or API's delivery to your customer, right? So so we have some great demos how it really works, and you can easily see it in next couple of slides. Before moving to the next slide, quickly, I want to take a poll where you're going to pop up again with a question. And this question would be more related to how and where you really introduce the security in your dev pipeline. Yeah, where do you really introduce security in your API lifecycle? Is it something that is planned by your security team and they have this gateway level traditional control? Or is it something that you already have the best practices where you believe in the shift left theory and the code is the one which is having all the things embedded to it? It is something that you are introducing in the build process, or it is after the deployment phase. So I would really keen to get this answer from you guys so that we probably know what is the strategy that you have around your API security.
Yeah. And Rohit, while we're waiting for everyone to answer, there is a question in the Q&A. What do you mean by security checked in with code?
Absolutely. Great question. So what I mean by security check-in into the code, the moment we are planning that we have to build these APIs, now in the planning phase itself, we can decide on what kind of security posture it has, because we know the vulnerabilities are very dynamic. After every 8 and 9 hours, there is a disclosure of vulnerabilities happening over the internet. Okay, and that is what the attacker is gaining the advantage with. Okay, so they figured out this is the vulnerability in the environment. Let's now exploit that vulnerability in order to gain advantage of the APIs that organizations are really exposing to the internet or their customer base, right? So when we are planning to build these APIs, we know what platform we have to use. It could be .NET, or it could be JSON, it could be REST API, whatever it is. Now, what I can do, I can also inject my security code along with the API's development lifecycle, so that as you're going with the release, you have the definition of the security. Okay, and I'm going to show you as part of my demo. We build one app in the Azure, and how this particular security really fits into the config, really fits into your API's definition. So this really make a difference with the traditional approach.
Rohit, I'll just share the results now from the poll.
Absolutely. So great insight, and I can see of course, the top answers are during the code and planning phase. And I'm sure a lot of organizations already started the shift left approach, but there are still organizations who are actually depending on the security or a SecOps team in order to refine on the security policies. And of course, a lot of organizations are actually doing it in the deployment phase, which is again a shift right approach. Okay, I build everything, I'm going to deploy, then I'm going to test it. We got the great insight. So the next slide I'm going to take, and it will going to talk about what are the challenges. Okay, and if you look at this, some of the security threat to APIs, you are familiar with OWASP top 10 of web application security and APIs top 10, and you must be aware about it as a DevOps or as a security. You must be aware about there is a dedicated web app research that is done, and based on that, these are the top 10 attacks. Similarly, the research has been taken care by the OWASP for the APIs, and they also categorize different level of attack. And if you look at this, most of them are actually matching with the web app. But having said that, there are few which is very unique to the APIs. We already support these features as part of our product, but today, as I mentioned, it's not the theory or it's not the only protection that we're going to look for, because what we really believe in, the most valuable APIs protection is not limited to OWASP top 10. Okay, so we believe this is the traditional control. Doing a rate limiting, I only need maybe 1,000 requests per second or 10,000 requests per second, or I only protect my APIs with OWASP top 10 is now a traditional threat, because hackers now know, okay, they are pretty intelligent and they know if anybody is exposing their APIs, they must be having the OWASP top 10 protection of APIs. They must be giving you out of slavers attack, okay, the attacks which are not really mentioned in the OWASP top 10. And in order to protect those attacks, you need to have an adaptive security solution, which understand what are the definition of attacks which are having in, and how do you really mitigate this attack. The second differentiation that I'm going to show you today is how do we really, okay, and this is the second level of attack, where how we can really monetize the authentication, okay, because most of the APIs are B2B. You have a business model and then you integrate your APIs with some other business model in order to complete that framework. How do we really do the authentication between this B2B's APIs or B2C APIs? Okay, so that's where the value prop really happens for the API protection. Okay, so adaptive attack prevention, which gives you the behavior analysis, and it gives you the great sense of security, as well as it also includes great observability. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the authentication, where how we can really get eliminate of the token based authentication on APIs, which is very static in nature, how we can really modernize it with integrating with OAuth or kind of a JWT token. Okay, and then the last one, traditional, which is of course need of the hour, but still it becomes now a framework that traditional controls are not enough for the API. So we have to see something which is very relevant for the business model that we are running and how much the APIs are really contributing to my business revenue. So let's look at, okay, so I'll probably present this slide, and this must be very familiar about this architecture must be familiar with you, because a lot of organization, okay, is using this framework where they have their APIs and they have the web app, which is protecting your API solution, or an edge gateway, which is protecting these APIs. And then the communication which is happening between these APIs to the different services in the backend is happening on a plain text, or it is happening without a security channel. Okay, so this include multiple backend services. All APIs are connected. Okay, so if you look at the suggestion services, this is connected with the shipping services in the backend. If you look at the checkout services, it is connecting with the payment service. As soon as I click on the checkout, I should redirect myself to the payment service. Each of these is considered an API endpoint and require an API gateway and appropriate control. The edge gateway simply, which is in this diagram sitting somewhere in the left, is not adequate in order to provide the security control to backend APIs, because this is not the capability of this gateway. This gateway is predominantly designed in order to handle the traffic which is coming from the front end, which is your browser or maybe an API client, towards your API infrastructure. But what happens when these APIs are talking to each other? The east to west control, okay? There is no control that most of organizations are having. And therefore, they lack with the observability, what their apps are really doing. how many apps are really infected and has vulnerabilities which can impact the dependent app or dependent APIs. How many apps does have a problem where it is really flooding with a lot of API requests and making the customer infrastructure or the backend infrastructure to overscale, okay, which is actually increasing your overall billing cycle, or you have to pay a lot of money to the cloud provider because they are the one which are hosting the APIs for you. So this is the problem with the API ecosystem or a traditional architecture where organization predominantly depends on a gateway level product in order to protect the API schemas, okay? And we all know exposing an API on internet is very easy task. You can simply do in maybe 5 clicks with a lot of products which are available. But when it comes to the security, it's always a nightmare to define what are the security criteria for these APIs, which are published to internet as well as for the partner ecosystem, because your partner may define a different set of policies, different set of authentication versus what a public network really need in. So you have to also tweak the product accordingly in order to ensure that the public facing APIs will get the more protection and the partner ecosystem APIs will get, of course, the same protection, but with a different level of controls, okay? So in the last diagram, what really an APIs need, okay? So we understand what an edge security really look like, where APIs are only front facing the security device, and it is more relevant with north to south traffic. But when the communication is happening between app to app, how this edge-based security is really lacking, okay, where it is really not giving any observability or any sort of security. So there are 3 controls which we think is very important for any APIs that are being published to internet or the partner ecosystem. The first thing is the management, okay? How do I really see a management? Will I have any single console where I can see how many APIs do I really publish and what are the status that are there, okay? How do I really see the access control? What kind of access control I can put in, and how do I really define which can access my APIs? And then attack surface, okay? So it could be the attack surface on the any known attack or any unknown attack, or it is, probably doing the DDoS defense, okay? So how F5 really fit in, or NGINX really fit in? NGINX is a foolproof API management solution, which is in combination of the API's gateway as well as in combination of the API security. And that has a vast integration system with any of the tools that you are using. It could be a Datadog, it could be Grafana, it could be REST API system. You can orchestrate the complete delivery of your APIs with the help of the open API space that we have. So the complete system or solution is really giving you the API management, which is very fast API management solution, combination of the raw power and efficiency of NGINX Plus and API gateway, okay, with all the control pane functionality. It provides a simple GUI from within. You can really define, monitor, and analyze your APIs. And also the external facing API to pull metrics into your monitoring solution of choice, which can be, really plugged into with controller and easily can be plugged into any premises, whether it's a multi-cloud environment or an on-prem or whatever you have. The most important takeaway is the NGINX controller API management solution let you do all the feature, okay? It described over the past couple of slides while we're still retaining 100% of the, NGINX as an API gateway, but it actually covers the complete life cycle of an APIs, okay? So what do we really cover as part of the API security landscape? We cover all 3 protection. It's not only limited to the OWASP. If you look at this, we do the protection on the protocol level where we check the compliance part, which protocol is good, whether it's authentication or non-authentication error. What are the rate limiting that you have to put on? What are the payload size you really wanted to allow? Because we know API calls are very, really small, okay? But if anybody is trying to garbage any value, which you do not really like, or your application gateway doesn't really like, we can do that payload size control also. So that's the first, I'll say, the security pillar that we have in the API security. The second pillar is around where you want to whitelist something. We want to do, okay, this is something I only really want to whitelist for a partner X or partner Y, you can do that part. The third one is in a row where we are detecting the malicious activity and difference. So once the packet or API request is being passed from the compliance level to the whitelisting level, the third pillar that it has to check is on the malicious activity. What this request is really, is it a human generated request or it is coming from some automated tool? And this tool may be able to, generate some sort of attack. So we can protect that, okay? Whether it actually came here in order to do any sort of attack on the credential stuffing, which gonna disclose all the identities that you store in your database, which API is really pulling in, or whether it is having any sort of attack which is not in the format of the request that I really receive in. So we can do all this behavioral check at different level in order to ensure your API should be protected in any case, okay? Whether it's a static attack, which of course the OWASP and the vulnerabilities, whether it is a dynamic attack, which is more on the behavioral side, we can protect those things as part of the multi-level of security policy that we have. So quickly, I'll introduce the third poll. Here we're gonna ask you about more on your API security. So John, I'll request you to introduce the poll for the audience so that they can contribute. Yeah, so the next one that we have is how you are protecting against the latest threat targeting your APIs, and that is beyond OWASP top 10. So OWASP top 10 we know is very basic and can be mitigated with a lot of things, but what about OWASP top 10? And we learn like OWASP is just now considered as a traditional security solution. It is more now an era where we are living in, where we require most of the adaptive security solution, which will understand the need of the hour, what my APIs really need, what kind of security posture my API really need, and accordingly it will tweak automatically rather than giving manual inputs, because developers or app dev must not be having that understanding. So they mostly relying on the solution in order to tweak itself. So that's what really wanted to know.
I actually have a question about this, Rohit, because security is a challenge in that we don't know what we don't know. There are certain things, if you follow the OWASP top 10 guidelines, then at least you have a framework for addressing the common security vulnerabilities. But if hackers realize that and they're starting to be more innovative, how do you figure out what you don't know?
Yeah.
What are the sort of pathway for that?
Absolutely, John. I guess great question. So how do we really identify it is two-way. One, we have the enough number of, I'll say, the security protection validation signatures, okay? And this particular intelligence, we got it from our own, the WAF, which F5 is leading the space from the last 20 years, okay? So the same intelligence now we put on this NGINX API security module, where we can identify an attack based on the already the intelligence that is being poured to us. And this intelligence is covering almost 7,000 different attacks, unlike what traditional security player are giving you, just the OWASP top 10, correct? So 7,000 different attacks are already covered on day one when you're pushing this control. On top of it, it has a behavioral or an adaptive security learning engine, which is actually learning about all the requests that you're receiving in and how your APIs are responding to those requests. And then we are matching with our database, whether this request or response is actually giving any data breach or any sort of critical information out as a response, and we can block that part, okay? So it's more to understand what API framework you use and what kind of behavior this framework is really doing in terms of the request, in terms of response, and accordingly we can tweak the signature side, we can tweak the security policies automatically on the engine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're just sharing the results from the poll, and I think there's a range of answers there, but of course I think there is that challenge. If you don't know what you don't know, then feeling around for a for a solution to this can be a challenge. I guess I'm looking forward to seeing how to learn from different probes on the APIs.
Absolutely, John. And thanks. I guess the great insight that organization again started, investing in the adaptive security solutions, because when this whole, adoption has started, it was just the traditional control rather than the, the adaptive. But now, of course, a great response that we have received, that organization really started thinking in the direction of adopting the, the API security, specifically in the dynamic world or era of the API. So this is a base component of securing an API delivery as per F5 best practices. We believe in no matter where you have your APIs, okay, whether it's a hypervisor like an AWS or Azure, or whether you have your own, service mesh created within the data center, we believe in providing the security, okay? And there are 3 tasks where we excel, we graduated ourselves. We do the security, okay? We do a level of security where we can protect your APIs from the frauds, we can protect your APIs from any vulnerabilities, any sort of protocol compliances, and any sort of, latencies issue that you have. We do the management of APIs, and it's end-to-end management where you have the monitoring, you have the dashboarding, you have the onboardings, okay? You have the portals where you can really publish your APIs and you can see what is happening with those APIs, what security challenges is being really addresses, and how it really performing. And then the gateway part would help you to really expose your APIs, okay? So it can do all that magic in order to make sure once the APIs are readily available, it is ready for the release, it takes the responsibility to publish these APIs to your partner ecosystem or the customer ecosystem, and introducing, of course, the authorization and authentication layer, the traffic management, rate limiting, and ensuring the APIs will be served with the highly available engine. So which means it ensure the availability of your API. So all 3 pillars is part of our portfolio. So as a customer, what do you really need? Okay, you just need to build the APIs, and the rest task really rely with the F5 in order to ensure these APIs are securely delivered, securely governed, and also providing the security about the complete ecosystem for the APIs. Okay. So again, the demo time, I'll quickly show you. So this is the environment that I have. And if you look at this, I have this visual core, which is, having all the definition. And I have integrated it with the GitHub, with the workflow. Okay. So when and as I change anything, this is a build that I'm doing. And of course, it is going to the GitHub. And from GitHub, I release. And then I have App Protect, which is the NGINX security module. And again, as you mentioned, we believe in the security as a core. So I write down the policies here, and then I have my application, which is, available in the Azure. So when I change anything here, I can easily push this change to the GitHub. And this is the configuration that I have. Okay. So along with, the flow that I have defined, I also have webhook-based integration. So I can simply push the changes from here, and then these changes will get replicated to the GitHub, like any organization CI/CD. So this is the GitHub that I have, okay? And if you look at this, these are the workflow that are there, and I can simply push this with the action. And once I click on action, of course, this changes will get replicated to my Azure cloud with help of the automation that I have built. So currently I have this DevSecOps pipeline where you can see a lot of workflow is already being run because I was doing the practicing. And then of course, if I'll introduce anything, it will show up here, whether it's a failed or it is succeed, all the status will be available under this particular workflow. Okay. And if I click any of the workflow, you can see like what is the job that I've really pushed, what are the steps that it has taken, what are the dependency that it has to take. All that things are available in this workflow action item. Okay. So as a developer, I can see what has happened to my job when I really pushed in. And this is the Azure environment where I push. So this is the repository that I have built for my NGINX, for my .NET based app that I have. And as well as, it is giving me the complete ecosystem about which images I have to really, pull in order to put the security in front of my APIs. And then I'm using the AKS engine, Azure AKS engine, which is having all that cluster definition, the Kubernetes cluster definition that I'm running. Okay, so within this, I have the egress, which is front facing my application, and then further load being transferred to the backend application, and where I really introduce the security. So this is the portal that I have, which is purely a web portal. My application, it is currently giving you a search button here. It has 3 different button: home, upload, and privacy. So just data that I've really put on here. But yeah, major use case is today how we can really introduce the security in the code. Okay, so if you look at the search, and if I'll do something in the search, I'm not going to get any response because I've disabled this search feature from the backend. Okay, so what I'm going to do as part of demo, I'm going to show you if I'll just enable this search feature, and if I'll try to use or abuse this search feature of APIs, how my NGINX can detect this and able to help me to really see what kind of attack I really received in. So I'll just quickly go to this application, and if you look at this code, it actually does the search. Okay, and let me just enable this code so that I can accept the values in the search item of my application. I just saved it. I give it a name for my workflow. I'll just say add search display, and I'll save it and push it to the GitHub. The moment I click on here, the changes are now started replicating to my GitHub. And if I'll go and switch to the GitHub account, you're going to see there is a new workflow that I received, and it is with the add search display. So I haven't done anything manually. I just clicked on my visual code and save and uploaded it to the GitHub. And now this workflow is here. If I'll click it here, you can see it is in the build phase. Okay. So, and the GitHub is actually setting up job, whatever dependency it takes, whether it's it has to install any sort of plugins or anything, it is actually doing that in the backend. Okay. So once this dependency is installed or it is being handled, we're going to see like what has really happened with my workflow. So right now I can see it is failed. Okay. And if I need to know what is the reason of this failure, I can simply click on this workflow. Okay. And the moment I'm going to click on it, it will going to tell me, okay, and the build phase only, this workflow is failed. So this is again on automation. Okay. So I now know I have the visibility through the CI/CD, what exactly happened to my specific build. And if you look at this particular information is telling me what has happened with my code. So if I scroll it down and I'll go to the last, it also give me the page also to reflect what problem really happened and how to resolve that. Okay, so if you look at this is telling me, the application itself is telling me there is a cross-site scripting reference. So which means the coding that I have built has some problem with the cross-site scripting, and it will automatically open an issue also. So you can see the JAP full report here, the issue is listed in the workflow. And if I'll click on this link, it automatically give me the problem statement also, like what has really gone with code, what has really done wrong with my code, and how do I really resolve it? What parameter I have to do? So if you look at this, I click on this link and it says this is the garbage value that has been inserted as part of the search button. And once I actually inserted this garbage value, this is actually, referring to a cross-site scripting based attack. Okay. And this is really impacting the security posture, because sometimes developers done some mistake in the code. And this is again totally unintentional, that they introduce something which hacker can take really advantage, okay, like of this search button or any other, inputs button. That really become a challenge for the organization, because the hacker can see that loophole and they started bombarding the website or the APIs that you have. So I already have the WAF enable in the monitoring mode in front of this APIs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put that WAF in the blocking mode. Okay, so it was earlier there in the transparent mode. If you look at this configuration, this is in the transparent mode. I'll just change this transparent to the blocking mode in order to see the current security architecture, okay, and how this changes that I've made is really gonna behave, okay. So I just did the blocking, and I'm gonna just save this code. I'm gonna push it, and let me give it a name like the enable WAF blocking, and let me just save it and push it to the GitHub. And again, you're gonna see there is a the new workflow that is gonna update on the GitHub, and whether it is successful or not, we're just gonna see in a minute. And if I'll go to the action, I can simply refresh it, and you can say enable WAF blocking is here, and it is executing. Again, it will gonna check all the dependencies, whatever it has to do. And here we go. We have a successful deployment of enable WAF blocking, and you can see the build is completed, okay? And it is also deployed to the prod environment. So you can integrate whichever environment you want to really put. And this issue is also resolved, okay? So the issue that was raised in the previous step regarding to cross-site scripting, you can see it's actually resolved here, okay? So because I pushed the WAF in the blocking mode, now the vulnerability which was there in your application code is not further reflecting. So if I'll put the same value here, the value which was introduced in the coding, and I will do search, I'll started getting the block page, okay? So if any hacker is trying to play around my application, doing any sort of malicious code injection or any sort of attacks, I'm there to protect those APIs, okay? And this is what the adaptive learning is. The attack has happened, I learned about it, and then I blocked it, okay? So without giving any sort of definition like these are the script, this is the pattern that I'm really receiving in the attack, I just put the WAF in the blocking mode, and it started automatically recognizing the pattern, and it started behaving on it. So this is the power of the adaptive engine. You do not really have to feed what you want to block. It has all the intelligence. It can learn about it, and it can show you here in the dashboard also how this really happens and what kind of requests that we really block in. So if you look at this, I integrated the complete ecosystem with the ELK stack, where you can see the complete visibility around the what kind of requests that we are receiving in, how many requests per second, what kind of visibility, what action that it has taken, the block alerted versus clean traffic, and then what are the response code that is being handled by my APIs. And if I'll see, there are different categories of attacks that you can see. So there are violation, I have a bot, I have illegal metadata collector, HTTP protocol compliance, and so on. Then the signatures, okay, which are the top IP addresses, which are the top client which initiated the attack, versus what are the countries which are one who is making noise in front of my APIs. And then the latest one, which recently got blocked, you can see like this is also listed here along with the timeline and everything, okay? So it gives you the great observability, what is happening wrong with your APIs, where exactly the APIs are being misused or abused. So if you look at this graph, it is giving me the development correction, like the time I really put it in from monitoring to blocking mode, how many packets does I really passed, okay? How many are really alerted? How many are really blocked? I'll get the complete visibility, okay? And I can define any certain point, like this is the point I want to put up policies in the blocking or a monitoring mode, and I need the great observability for that part, I can do that part, okay? So this dashboard really gives the comfort to a lot of organization where they get the detailings about what is happening wrong with their infrastructure, okay? So the next one that I have, and this is probably the last demo, is on the DDoS also. So similar, the WAF dashboard, there is a dedicated dashboard for the DDoS also, where we can see, again, filter out how many DDoS attacks that are happening, how many violations of DDoS which is happening, okay? How many times my API is being consumed without even my information, and that are from the bad actors, okay? I can simply see that on the graph. Again, I can see how many TPS, the transaction per second, has happened, what I really did with those transactions, whether I throw a challenge, whether what is the stress level of my APIs. So I can actually see that complete visibility around my APIs. So in order to summarize what we have today covered is how we really do the automation in the API security, okay? What kind of tools we can really introduce in order to ensure your APIs are highly secure, okay? It's not only the traditional security control we talk about the more or beyond the OWASP top 10, okay? How we really can really cover, which was traditionally maybe, you know, used as a open source tool or what probably you will be using in the traditional API security player. But what are the capability that we can really introduce to your API environment that is covering more than OWASP top 10 or any security, static security module that you have? A better observability, okay? The capability to integrate with any framework that you have, which gives you a great visibility about the API attack. As we see here in this demo, we get integrated with the ELK stack in order to provide you the great visibility around how and what an API really look like, how does it really behave, what kind of attack it receive, what country, what IP, what type of attacks, and so on, okay? So this is summary. I'll quickly move to the thank you slide. There is a barcode mentioning in this slide. I'll encourage you all to scan this QR code and just complete the feedback survey. And there are a couple of questions that are there in the feedback survey form, which actually, you know, give us the perspective, like what you guys are really currently facing in terms of the APIs, what are the challenges, and how F5 really can help. So with this, I'll probably hand over to Jon. Thank you, Jon.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Rohit. I have a couple of questions actually. We will show the QR code in a moment, but can you go back to the that dev pipeline slide that you had? It was very early on. So it was about slide 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah.
So I think there are a number of interesting slides here actually. So yeah, this one. So when we talk about integrating security into each one of these stages, where I want to just understand the architecture a little bit, right? I think it's this slide and also the API ecosystem slide, and the other one that where you had the deployment of NGINX Plus and the web application firewall and Kubernetes. So can you just give a picture of where that fits in the what you need to do at the coding stage in order to have protection of the APIs once it gets to deployment?
Absolutely, Jon. I guess a great question again. So simply, when I'm saying integrating security in the code level is where I'm giving the definition of the NGINX security module, okay? So the moment you're writing the code and you're saying this code will gonna spin up in a container, okay? The same time, you're also giving a definition of NGINX security module, and that will also gonna fire up a container, a dedicated container for NGINX, okay? Now you can define on the deployment part, whether you need it as a gateway level, which is more to do with the Ingress, or whether you want to strictly sit into the code of your application, okay? So where NGINX can become a plugin to your application container, okay? And whatever request that your application container is receiving, we act as a plugin and we filter it before it actually reaches to your code or your code is being executed, okay? So that's where the deployments really fit in. And that is what is the mean by security with the code. So which means once your application really consuming any resources from your, you know, the Dockers or AKs or EKs cluster that you have, NGINX become part of that container ecosystem of yours, okay? And since it has the definition of the security, because you give it the baseline of security policy, and there are I'll say the build templates are available, it already get the intelligence how it really have to behave for different security challenges that are coming in, okay? So to relate it with the app ecosystem slide, if probably I have to do that. So the NGINX can sit in each of the services, like the mobile services or suggestion services or category services or inventory services or the cart services. So we can sit within the DNA of all these services so that when and as they are taking any input request from the browser or any mobile apps, and when they are giving the feed to the backend services also, it will be a sanitized request. There is no, the vulnerabilities, or there is no bad things which should be there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much for sharing that. I guess you can flip back to the thank you slide with the QR code now. Okay. So I just very, very impressive how have you laid out the challenge and also the different things to think about as an organization. We're going to publish this recording together with a summary of your presentation, so people can find it on the apiConnections.co. Okay, so we have a great question actually from Amrut asking, can you show a template? Can you show a template of a definition of an NGINX app protect? Do you have one that you can show?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we have a repository. Okay, Amruta, sorry, yeah, we have a repository in the GitHub with the name of NGINX app protect. If you can probably search it, it will be available to consume. Okay, so there is no restrictions that we have really put on. And if you require, I can share that with I can add that in the presentation so that you guys can access it and consume it in your organization. So that I can do that.
So that's going to be in the definition of that is going to be in a YAML file, is it?
Yeah, it's most probably the YAML file, but yeah, again, you can, like some customer really need the Go, okay, because they're using Go for their app development and others. So we can actually customize it to the different format also according to the customer need.
Okay, all right. There's time for one final question, if there is one. No? Okay, well, thanks very much, Rohit. Okay, so yes, Amrut is really keen to have that YAML file sample. So we'll make sure we get that
Absolutely.
to Amrut. Okay, all right. Well, thanks very much, and of course to all the attendees. I hope you got great value out of it. Please complete the survey form. We'd love to know what you want to know more about, and we look forward to seeing you in future events. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Bye.